Hello everybody and welcome to this week's update from the South African Business Council here in Dubai. Over the last few weeks leading up to Expo, we've been fortunate to meet some of the leading CEOs and their respective executive teams shaping the success of Expo 2020. It's always great to hear of the leadership insights and some of the reflections that are critical for this catalytic event as Dubai gets ready to host the world for the next 6 months. This week has been no different. Often when we meet with entrepreneurs and businesses that are threading the value chain between the UAE and Africa and specifically South African markets, we often get the question around how do we set up the business in such a way that we can have quicker access to market, that we can truly facilitate in the value chain services that are required, and ultimately be able to de-risk but also accelerate the business. This week, with Naresh Manchanda, the partner at MBG Corporate Services, Naresh gave us some critical insights in terms of how MBG Corporate Services are thinking about the value that they create for these businesses, the way that they really consult and advise, but get into the architecture of these businesses to help these businesses to succeed in the UAE and also expand and ultimately scale into Africa. It was phenomenal to hear Naresh's reflections around what's critical for these businesses to succeed, but also, in addition, getting his view on Expo and how critical Expo is going to be as a catalytic event to help fast track some of these conversations. We talk about investment, we talk about successful businesses, and more importantly, we talk about the leadership that's needed for these businesses to succeed. I absolutely love the conversation with Naresh. I'm sure you will as well.
Our journey is evolving. Each day we take another step forward on our shared path. We are all connected, and we all collaborate. In some ways that are obvious, and many which aren't. With your support and commitment, we look forward to a brighter future. And we are excited to announce that Expo 2020 Dubai will now open its gates from October 1st, 2021 until March 31st, 2022. For the world to come together and celebrate human brilliance and achievement like never before. We are one.
Good morning, Mr. Naresh Manchanda. Thank you for making the time to join us.
Very good morning, Paul. It's a pleasure seeing you here and talking to the audience online.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk a lot about Expo. It's going to be great to get your insights and get some of your learnings as well. But I thought maybe before we do that, it would be great to get your sense just what your organization is doing and how you are rethinking the business, especially after COVID, the pandemic, and some of the nuances that are happening here in the UAE.
Sure, Paul. So MBG is an organization about 2 decades old, headquartered in Singapore and present in all the complex jurisdictions. So we are present in Japan, China, Germany, India, UAE, and Singapore predominantly. Our main focus has been cross-border support to the organization on both sides of the businesses, where we work on various verticals, including taxation, legal, accounting, auditing, and risk and M&A. All the areas where a typical business would need to make sure they understand the market entry, they have the feasibility studies, they have the taxation planning, and all the complex transactions that they want to do it in the country. And that's the predominant theme that we have been deriving on this.
So just talking about MBG Corporate Services, you mentioned that you have this global footprint, and it would be quite interesting to know then when you look at the UAE, what are the particular nuances that you find in the UAE compared to your global business? I mean, we know after COVID, there's big expectations around growth. We're seeing there's a consumer demand. How's MBG working with the different partnerships that you have to shape more business value here within our backyard?
I think we have total respect for the UAE leadership, starting from Abu Dhabi to Dubai and all the Emirates coexisting. So if you see the model, Abu Dhabi has the oil and gas, Dubai has everything to build together of best of everything in the world, and then all the other Emirates coexisting together and giving a unique proposition. So if you really see the conversation outside the other countries is, you're taking my jobs, you're taking my positions. So I have to localize. But the theme that UAE emanates is about welcoming expats. Let's grow the business together. Let's do the pie. Let's coexist. And they do various things over a period of time to increase the business globally. So overall, from business perspective, it has been a very positive direction, especially from UAE. And if you really observe, the compliance has been growing in this part of the world, whether it's taxation, whether it's legal, whether it's privacy policies, all the procedures are getting implemented in this country. And this is getting internationalized by the day. So for the firm like us, we have a tremendous opportunity based on our deeper experience. And we are a firm which not only do only consulting, we give a 360-degree view, because most of the senior leadership that we have worked in the industry, we are working in the consulting, and to top it all, we have regulatory feedback also. So we have senior leadership who have worked with federal tax authorities and other places, so that we can give a view which is very balancing and practical as well. So it's a great opportunity for a firm like us.
Yeah, Naresh, I take your point. I think also if you reflect about the UAE, you mentioned something critical there, and that's about the leadership and how that leadership is taking a vision and also manifesting it into the right type of policies, the right type of regulations to ultimately stimulate more business. So it's great to hear how MBG and your team also part of that fabric. So it's, I think it's exciting times, but let's maybe then segue into Expo, because in a few weeks, we're going to have this mega event in the UAE, and it would be great to get your personal reflections, just how Expo is shaping for the MBG team and how you're reflecting about Expo.
Right. So I think before I go to the MBG, I think this is what I visualize. So on the one hand, we have Dubai, who will basically showcase its entire infrastructure, which has been developed rapidly in the last couple of decades. Then also it is going to show the path on the various themes that is coming out of Expo. Then it's going to also highlight it's not only about making business here. This is one of the best places to basically do business, live here, invest here. So on the one hand, it will be a showcase of the UAE at the main theme, but also to extend it further, it will also showcase Middle East region in a limelight as well. And then on the second side, we have country pavilions. Now they have to showcase and market their potential and what has been achieved so far, whether it's from the business side, whether it's from the cultural side. So there's a lot of conversation happening in both sides, but it depends on the teams which are ready, teams which can chew a lot, because there's a lot on the table right now. And especially partnering with SAPCO has been very enlightening. The whole team is very solidly doing many initiatives. And so our focus is to basically support these initiatives, these conversation on all three sides, where SAPCO is basically facilitating it out. UAE is trying to showcase investment into the country, while other countries also have their goal to get investment into their countries and promote their culture. But Dubai actually is a classic case where it has shown how it can facilitate multiple investment without very deep resources or natural resources. So we all have to work together to help facilitate entrepreneurs or the businesses to hold their hands, to support them and guide them what is on the table, how they can work without creating much loss, so that they can gain from the word go and don't waste time and energies on any other efforts.
Agreed. And I think the other lens that you also referred to there is, with this great opportunity, you need entrepreneurs to bring the ideas and to bring the solutions to potentially transcend some of the challenges that we also have. So, I think when you look at about Expo, it is that culmination of entrepreneurs, the different stakeholders, and the ideas and the innovation will come together. And ultimately, it's going to be where Dubai hosts, once again, the world to be that epicenter of this type of innovation. So if you think about your customers, Naresh, I mean, how are they thinking about the Expo? Because you mentioned there's a big value chain here, right? It's the supply and the demand. It's bringing business together. There's a showcase for Dubai, but also for the Middle East. So how do you see your clients benefiting from Expo?
So I think maybe if I'll give you a brief idea about of what categories of clients we have. So we work with Fortune 500 companies who have already an international businesses across the globe. Then we work with royal families here. Then we also work with some of the sovereign wealth fund across the globe. Also, we have a huge SME sector also. So the client base that we have is quite varied and different. Now, if you really see overall, the theme of entrepreneurship is very pertinent in today's time because it's now PPP, public-private partnership. That's how the bigger projects can go. And around those bigger projects, most of the SME and MSME will grow. And tomorrow, if they do well, they will become a bigger companies like these Fortune 500. So I think it's an exciting time where multiple industries and multiple companies at different level are now understanding collaboration is the only mantra. You are not an amoeba where you exist on your own, alone, and you can do everything on your own. There is no point. Let's take a step back. In terms of pandemic, there was a lot of discussion. A lot of supply chain will be uprooted and everything will be localized. But as soon as pandemic is sort of dying down, there is a clarity that both have to be done, which is existing supply chain has to be done, plus something localized has to be done. So the key point is balancing out so that you can unlock the right value proposition across all this supply chain and coexist. So a lot of beyond entrepreneurship, there is a lot of requirement of these government to show stability, courage, leadership, and do some of the big infrastructure projects around which all this conversation will be built on.
And it would be interesting to know, just when when you explain it, it sounds so easy, and I'm assuming it's because MBG know partly all the answers to some of these challenges. But, answering that value question, how do you find our entrepreneurs ultimately getting to some sort of value? Because again, you like you say, it's a balance. But in your experience, how does MBG facilitate? How do you ultimately reconcile and accelerate some of these entrepreneurs to ultimately answer that value question?
Thanks, Paul. I think very interesting question. To be honest, if I tell you I know everything, that will be not true at all. So I personally and as a firm, we really believe real intelligence is about working together. So while businesses or entrepreneurs, they can focus on their core businesses per se. So whatever they know they can do internally and they're good at, they should focus on that. Wherever there is a complex situation, whether it's on the compliance side or liaising with the government side, authority side, we closely work and understand first the problem, articulate, align with the businesses to understand this is what we want to do, and we still talk to them. You take whatever you can chew. The balance part where you don't have the expertise, you don't have the knowledge, do not waste your time. Give it to MBG. If it is a complex issue, we have all the verticals ready for you. So because it's in any single transaction, it's not about only taxation aspect, because there's a legality involved, there's a risk involved, there is other aspects involved from the technology side also. So to me, it cannot be a one-way answer of telling you artificial intelligence will solve the world. The real intelligence to me is let's collaborate, put the pieces together, simplify, lean it, and resolve it.
Yeah, and I think the other key reflection that we've seen is it's also about partnerships. I think Expo and companies like MBG is helping this value chain to structure the right partnerships. And you mentioned some of the private to government and business to business type of partnerships that are being structured. But just reflecting on Expo again, I think that's going to be the catalyst event where we are once again as private sector bringing together the different segments, your big businesses and your SMEs, but ensuring that there are key partnerships structured with government as well. And I think this very, very, very well, where you're working so close with UAE leadership to create value. So maybe give us a sense, how do you see UAE leadership over the last 2 years, and specifically how Expo is bringing this business all together?
Paul, I think a couple of points we need to touch base on. So one is about UAE. If you really observe UAE for last, not 2 years, even for last couple of decades, which I have been also associated, the show must go on. Whether it is pandemic, whether it is financial crisis, whether it's, I'll say, a small incident, fire at Dubai Mall on the New Year Eve. They have the courage, tenacity to make sure things moves on. So it's a real example for all of us as an individual also, at the company's level also, as well as at the government level, where we need to constantly reform. There is no one formula to resolve all the issues and you can stay as it is altogether. Throughout the life cycle of individual companies and governments, we need to constantly reform, repurpose, and do the thing which is important for the country on all the dimensions, whether it's political stability, whether it is financial acumen, of leveraging sovereign wealth fund. Here is a country which is in top 10 in the sovereign wealth fund. So they are thinking of not now or couple of years, they're thinking of next couple of generations. So this is a theme that emanates from this country. I think we are really respectful and proud of this leadership that we have. Similarly, on the businesses side, again, as I mentioned, in terms of we need to define, design, and then implement it out. But it's again a collaborative effort to build it together. Does that answer your question, or you want, if I missed something?
No, I think what it amplifies is the philosophy. The philosophy of how a vision ultimately gets articulated to the right type of activities and decisions to make it real. So I do think it comes back to the level of partnerships, as you say, but also how resiliency and tenacity plays such a big part of the DNA in the UAE. And I think what we're all excited about is how the Expo is going to tease that out. And for the first time, not for the first time, but for essentially a big scale event like Expo, the world's going to get a feeling of that philosophy that we have here in the UAE. So talking about the South African Pavilion and also African business specifically, we're obviously going to do a lot of partnerships at Expo. MBG is heavily involved in the facilitation track of how we get South African businesses to ultimately trade here in Dubai and the UAE. The other lens is Africa being substantial for us. We know over the last decade, we've seen significant increase in trade flows between the UAE and Africa. Maybe give us your view on how you look at this continent called Africa and the opportunities that are there. It would be good to get your sense of when you look at the global business versus your Africa business, what are some of the key learnings?
I think I will give you my brief overview of whatever little understanding I have. So I have traveled to almost 50 countries, including African continent, couple of countries, and worked there and resolved some of the transactions in this part of the world. So I think one of the key theme, again, I'm jumping back to UAE and then I'm coming to Africa. If you talked about resilience, see, I also learned this term and I want to share it out. So resilience is something when an issue happens and then you bounce back and it becomes the same level. The next level is anti-fragility, which is basically means issue comes and you become stronger than before. So this is what UAE is a lesson for all of us. So Africa has to learn a lot from this tenacity that has been built over years, is continue to improve. So now in Africa, there is a view which is from outside the world and what the media tells you. Similarly, for Middle East, there is a view which most of the media will tell you. To give you my example, when I came to the desert a couple of decades ago, most of the people were saying, you're going to the Middle East, you're going to the Middle East. But when you come here on the ground, you understand it. You feel what the proposition is all about. Similarly, for Africa, my view is very clear. There are many countries which have a huge potential. And I think that's the last territory on the globe which has been not fully explored. There's a lot of discussions around it. So I think the way we structure ourselves when we work at MBG, we support companies from their headquarters side and companies representative on the ground. So when we work with some of these African companies, our representatives or our offices, team leaders from here will be sitting in their headquarters and helping the local teams. So when both these propositions are aligned and both of them are talking to each other, they get more clarity. And it's about constant clarity. It's not a one-time conversation and we expect the business will flow. No. It has to be assessed, it has to be executed, it has to be implemented, and it has to be reviewed regularly, monitored regularly to understand what's moving, what's not moving, and then do a course correction regularly.
Yeah, and I think what MBG has done very well is with that clarity and transparency that you bring to your customers, you're also de-risking their business. So for them, they want to expand, they want to grab new markets, they want to solidify value once again in specific geographical markets. And this is where MBG can ultimately provide that link. So it's exciting times. I know that we're going to see a lot of you at Expo as well. And you personally, with my team and your team, will be at the South African Pavilion, helping customers to get a better sense of Africa and also how we can run more business here in the UAE. We're looking forward to seeing you there, Naresh. And we're looking forward to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Paul. I think I'm really looking forward to support the entire team and especially with your leadership. It's really a game changer, I believe. So I think both of us, if we work work together along with other teams, we are the catalyst. So it's not about only one party coming from Africa, having some notions and meeting various people. If you are able to arrange these conversations, which can help them grow and continue beyond Expo, some of these. For example, some of the connect that we have built from B2B propositions. For example, when either the choice is look for a distributor as a phase one or set up your own manufacturing base. What are the incentive this country is giving? There are a lot of incentive which never gets highlighted because it's not marketable fully by the people. And there's a propositions. For example, this country has about 140 plus double taxation avoidance agreement. Now you need to understand those to leverage it out. So here we need to build this piece by piece, guide them, hold them and run with them. But it's a pleasure talking to you as well, and really looking forward to support you in all the endeavors that you want to promote between Africa as well as your region.
And I think, again, we're going to have 6 months at the Expo to truly, look at these conversations. And I'm quite confident that when we are done, business and also the people that are associated with business would look at the UAE and share your passion about some of the unbelievable dynamics that they can capitalize on in the region. So Naresh, as always, it's great to hear you speak about business and the potential here in the UAE, and very excited to see you at Expo and see how we can continue the conversation.
Likewise, Paul, I think it has been exponentially positive. That's a term I would use for you talking to you this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.